when we dehorned all them over the 300 plus rhino over the course of like an intense 10 days, their poaching went down to, I think they had one or two over the next 12 months.
This is Folded Curiosity.
Say something about, there's a lot of, I guess, African wildlife in Texas. Is it Texas?
Yeah, there is a ton, because people like to hunt there are a lot, and they like to hunt big game animals. So, like, you'll just see like zebra on properties, you know.
Wow.
I've heard a lot of different antelope. You'll see, I think, sable and other roan antelope, and trying to think. I mean, there's quite a few. Yeah, you'll see big game, Africa big game, you know.
Do they do
Texas.
well with that?
Yeah, actually,
in Texas, right?
These are pretty durable animals, and some of them have pretty big ranges, like where they're native to, in say sub-Saharan Africa, the southern, half of the continent, right?
Sure.
And there's going to be, some variation among those ecologies. And
Sure.
with the rhino, for example, with the organization I've worked with the most with the rhino conservation is called Rhino 911, and so we've looked into the idea of trying to get a small seed population of rhino to the U.S. where they'd be more protected, because the security for rhino is so expensive. But yeah, we talked about the idea of getting a seed population, a small population just in the U.S. where protecting them is so much less expensive, and it's reliable. They're not going to get poached and killed for their horns, because that's the big issue. That's what's killing our rhino. They're getting poached and killed for their horns, because that horn is so much money. I mean, you can't blame the people that are going out where a year's worth of salary is not coming close to what they might be able to make if they can snag this rhino and grab a horn for, their boss man that's really making the money on it. But anyways, what you were saying about how do they do in Texas, we hired we consulted with some ecologists, and there were some areas in Texas where actually the grazing and the nutrient profile of the grasses and what would be grazed by the rhino was comparable and looking like it'd be a great option for these rhino. So so I mean, I don't know that the intricacies of what that would translate to a giraffe or some of these, or a zebra rather, and some of these other animals, but they can potentially do well. That's here. Great. The climate, the nutrient profile of the land and the soil, and what they'd be eating like rhino. If we did white rhino, they're pretty much grazers, meaning they're mostly just eating grasses. That's the bulk, by far, majority of their diet. We can find them grasses that are good for them. Black rhino are different. They're more like, elk, for example. Elk are grazers. They eat grass. Right. Deer are more foragers. They, the twigs and the roots and the other stuff, they're kind of foraging different variety of little plant materials. Right. Black rhino are kind of like that. So you see them in more forested areas. Interesting. So finding a nutrient profile for them might be trickier than a white rhino that's more just kind of grass focused. You just find the right grasses, and like we're kind of good to go. We might supplement them a little bit, and in captivity that wouldn't be that complicated. Sure. And there's commercial rhino pellet kind of diets you can find that are, take place in the zoo the zoo world, for example.
Captivity, you mean like it would be like a ranch?
Yeah, exactly.
Like
exactly, like a big plot of land. I mean, even like that's where rhino are living. In most places where they are in Africa, even if they're in big parks, a lot of those are fenced. Like there's no truly fully wild where these animals can experience their whole range of living, or their whole migratory patterns. Exactly. Like that's how we get these under and overpopulations, because everything's kind of just fenced off, especially South Africa. 90% of the world's rhino, even including Asian rhino species, 90% of these are in South Africa. Wow. And the majority of those are on private properties. So like the Private Rhino Owners Association, for example, that's the stronghold of our rhino left on as a whole, left on the planet. It's these private places. Wow. And the amount these guys have to spend on security is unbelievable, dude. I mean, depending on the size of your property, it's usually tens, but really hundreds of thousands of dollars per month. Depending on the size of how many rhino.
What was it, Old Jogi?
Yeah, Old Jogi. Yeah.
Same. Did they have I don't remember. Did they have a fence there?
I think they did. And that's Kenya. And but yeah, I think they did. I don't think they were, but I don't quote me on that. So I don't remember. I'm not sure. But that place is it's in a good area. Poaching is not the same as in South Africa. Like, listen, there's definitely a fair share of poaching in Kenya, but they've got good security. They've got people out in the field. They're their private business. So they've got good they've got people that can afford to protect these animals, and they might not even have to trim the rhino. Like most of these other places, like we have to go trim the rhino, the horns. we actually trim the horn off, because it's keratin. It's like a nail trim, right? It's not even, I wouldn't even call it like a surgery. It's not like a dehorning where we're declawing, something, where you're removing a tissue and surgically intervening. We're literally just cutting a horn off. But that's been proven to be one of the most effective ways to curb poaching, like by far. Like there's a park, for example, not far from Johannesburg, just a little north of it, called Pilanesberg National Park. Great park. They've got 350 or so rhino. And like we started dehorning them in, I want to say 2020, and they were losing multiple rhino, like several rhino every month.
How do you dehorn? How does that?
So we sedate them. And so that's all. We can get into that. But anyways, when we dehorned all them over the 300 plus rhino over the course of like an intense 10 days, their poaching went down to, I think they had 1 or 2 over the next 12 months.
Like, well, why would they be poached if there's no horn? For what?
Either out of spite. Sometimes people, like the poachers, if they see a rhino without a horn, usually it's a spite move, or it's like, I don't want to track this animal again, and then come to find out it doesn't have a horn if I wasn't able to see that or somehow before. So let's just terminate it. It's not going to do any good for us. It's going to take, a year or more to have an appreciable amount of horn than it's worth me taking the risk to do. Let's just get rid of it now. So if we do see another rhino on the move, hopefully it's one with a horn. You know what I mean?
You're like, damned if you do, damned if you don't. Jeez.
No, but really, I mean, going from, anywhere from 3 to 12 or so a month to 1 or 2 a year after the horns were trimmed, big difference. So like
12 a month?
Yeah, I mean, there was some months where they were getting slaughtered.
Oh my God, it's like one every, 3 days?
Slaughtered, man. Yeah, I mean, and usually it's kind of clustered, like, so full moon. I used to love full moons until I got into wildlife conservation. And then full moons, I mean, you've been out in the field in the full moon. I mean, even in the U.S., let alone anywhere. Like if you're out in like in a, say, a big park or something, or protected area in Africa, and there's no other light pollution super close to you, a full moon's like low lit stadium lights. Yeah. You don't need headlights. Like you can see everything.
A mile or so.
It's not daylight, but dude, you can see your hands in front of you. You can pretty much see everything pretty decently. Great for poaching. Yeah. Imagine, because you don't need to turn on your lights. You can be kind of, a little under the radar, a little bit more, depending on the security of the place. And that's where like full moons are like the stressful nights. Like anytime it's a full moon every month, it's like, what am I going to hear back from my African friends?
Wow. That's just such a...
Yeah, because you used to love them, right? You think full moon, so cool. And it's like, oh yeah, this sucks. Like this is when all our guys are vulnerable. Yeah,
I suppose 1 or 2 nights on either side.
Quite a bit of the time that we're hearing bad news the day following, that next morning. You know what I mean?
So terrible.
Yeah.
Watch the full episode this Thursday.